Hey everybody, welcome back to the Level Up, the show where I give you all the tips and tricks and techniques necessary to take your training to the next level. As always, if you like this series, or you like this show, be sure to like, follow, hit that bell icon to be notified of all of our latest posts, and share this with another fit pro you think that might benefit from a little leveling up. So this week we're going to take a look at one of the more common exercises you see in the gym, and a lot of trainers are doing it and aren't necessarily putting the thought into it that it needs. That exercise is the dumbbell row. So when I talk about leveling up the dumbbell row, there isn't one specific change we're going to make. Instead, today we're going to talk about the intention. Intent is a topic we spoke about a few weeks ago in one of our earlier episodes. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out, linked right up here. And what I mean when I say intent is that we need to modify the way we perform our exercises based off of our desired outcomes. So today we're going to look at that specifically with the dumbbell row. The reason I'm hearkening in here on the dumbbell row in particular is that a lot of times you'll see trainers prescribe the dumbbell row to their clients without much differentiation in how they're actually performing it, regardless of the client's desired outcome. They'll often just say, keep the back still, keep your back flat, drive it up, and that's about it. However, depending on what our client is trying to achieve, there are a few different ways we can perform this exercise, not even take into account the many different hand and elbow positions we can achieve. So today I want to look at 3 different executions for the dumbbell row and how they can be implemented in your client's training to help them reach their desired outcomes. Okay, let's take a look. The first variation we're going to talk about is kind of what I would consider the more standard variation. This is the version we see most often, and it's not wrong, but we want to go through it now to kind of set our baseline. So this is going to be the first variation we go through. For our baseline row, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my client set up with a nice strong core, flat back, neutral chin, bracing that one hand. Our foot placement here can vary depending on our goals. Just have your client go by what's comfortable while maintaining a neutral spine. And on our baseline here, what I want to do is I'm going to lead with my scapula to engage the posterior chain muscles of the upper back as my prime movers. And then I'm driving that elbow close to my body, up and around, trying to get my thumb into that armpit for maximum range of motion, and then controlling all the way down with a nice even pace both ways. Whether you have the knee up or down is kind of a client preference. I actually prefer to have people with both feet on the ground, and you can slide one foot back, say if they have a little bit of issue closing those hips up. But for people with decent hamstring and back mobility, I would like to have both feet together, bracing the hand here, bracing the core, keeping everything nice and neutral, keeping that dumbbell in tight. We're driving scapula back, keeping it in tight, thumb up as high as I can go, really retracting through that backside and controlling all the way down. So the reason I call this our baseline variation is because this is the one I prescribe most often to my clients that are coming in for general health and wellness. The reason being is it's more holistic, right? Because we are taking that shoulder through a very big range of motion. We're bringing it all the way back as far as we can go. We're getting a lot of flexion here at the elbow. We're getting extension even in the shoulder backwards. We're moving through the scapula. We're getting more of the muscles going than we would with some of our other approaches that we're going to look at later. That is our base movement, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that if our goal is simply to activate the muscles of the posterior chain in the back to work on our total body fitness. However, if you have a specific, say, physique goal or a power goal or a performance goal, this isn't always going to be your best option. So let's look at a couple of versions that are a little more applicable to those previously stated goals. The next version I'm going to look at is for someone who has more of a physique or aesthetic goal, okay, and we're looking more here to isolate and better develop one single muscle group as opposed to our baseline, which is a little bit more of a holistic approach, okay? So once I set up here, instead of just pulling straight back, what I'll have my client do is think getting broader through the scapula here. As I reach down, I'm really going to try to broaden the scapula and elevate the humerus to lengthen out that lat. Then as I pull, I'm not going to be worrying about what the elbow is doing. So my hand here becomes just a hook. So the only range of motion is going to be to depress that scapula that I've elevated as I rotate it up on the humerus. So I'm depressing that scapula and bringing my humerus and elbow back. What that looks like is a nice deep contraction here of the lat, but I'm not going to pull up past that midline where I would on our baseline, because here, just about there is where my lat can't do any more work, right? Once that arm starts to pass behind, the elbow angle closes and it turns really into more of an arm workout than a lat workout. So for someone who's going to be stepping on stage or just wants to have a very particular look, this variation is going to be a little bit more applicable because it does hone in on more of the lat in and of itself. This type of training does require more exercises which is why I don't consider it the more holistic baseline approach. But it is very wonderful for someone who's trying to isolate in and really hone in on those lats. For our second variation, I'm going to keep that same position here, and I'm going to actually open up that lat a little more by elevating my scapula and internally rotating my humerus. Now, as I pull here, my hand becomes more of a hook, and I'm going to drive that elbow up and back, and not going nearly as far, keeping a little tension on at the bottom here, but you'll see getting a nice big stretch here at the lat. I'll rotate a little bit for you. We're getting a nice big stretch there at the lat, keeping the tension on and really honing in there. The third and final variation we're going to talk about here, I hinted at before, and that's somebody who has a performance goal, okay? So say someone is a combat athlete or a contact athlete, or someone who does throwing, anybody who needs to produce high amounts of force, they want to train specifically for that type of movement, right? If you spend all your time in the gym going very, very slow, it doesn't necessarily carry over the best to your sport. And obviously there is gray areas in there, but I'm speaking kind of a generalization here. So say someone is a wrestler and they need to be able to pull people to them with great amounts of force quickly. It's not going to really help them to do that bodybuilding style we just went over, or even the baseline one where we're kind of having an even tempo down and up. So what I'm going to do here, as opposed to changing up the actual execution of itself, now I'm going to change the tempo of the movement to make it an entirely different kind of row. So this is for more of our power athletes, contact athletes, anybody who is having more of a sports performance-based desired outcome. So what I'll do is set up kind of similar to both the other two. Now, instead of overly rotating up that scapula and trying to get as long of a lat as possible, I'm putting myself into a strong position here, and I'm going to drive up with an immense amount of force, retracting my scapula first, driving my elbow back and up. Boom, and when I get here, I'll have that person try to decelerate the weight, control it, dead stop, and bang, driving it up nice and hard. We're going to set up very similar to our first version, but on this, I would more often than not have people stagger the foot, because in sport, we tend to be more unilateral, more offset. We almost are never able to produce our force from here. So we have this offset stance. It also helps us get our legs more involved. From here, I'm going to get a nice good grip. As opposed to just coming up with that even pace of our baseline, I'm going to drive and control it down, and control it down, and control it down. What that does is help us develop the neural patterns that are more applicable to the speeds of their sport, and also develops our ability to produce force at speed, right? In a competition-based scenario, you need to be able to turn it on and be fast and powerful when you need to, and conversely, slow it back down when you need to. So there you have it. There's just 3 ways that you can modify your basic dumbbell row to level it up and help your clients get the most out of their training. Now, as I said earlier, if you like this video, please be sure to like it, leave a comment below and let me know if this helped you, and share this with any other fit pro you think can benefit from a little leveling up. Be sure to like us on Facebook and Instagram at KIPS Online. For KIPS Online and Level Up, Coach Ron, and I'll see you next time.